The National Lotteries Commission says it's waiting for the final report from the SIU's probe into its former chairperson. Yesterday, the unit announced that it obtained a preservation order to freeze the luxury property of Alfred Nevhutanda. It's understood that he bought that mansion with the Commission's funds, which was meant for community projects. So there have been various reports previously about some serious mismanagement of funds from the National Lotteries Commission. So this morning we ask, is enough being done to deal with these allegations of corruption, particularly at the NLC? Let's bring in Mathew Cuthbert from the DA's Trade and Industry Shadow Ministry. Mathew, it's great to have you with us on the program this morning for your take on the story. The heartbreaking part about this 27 million rand that Nevhutanda Investments used to buy this mansion for the former chairperson of the National Lotteries Commission is that that money was meant for real community upliftment, things like athletics tracks, old age homes, a rehabilitation center in Soshanguve.
Good morning, Michelle, and thank you very much for having me on your show. Yes, most definitely, and as with most of the 300 million rand that the SIU have thus far uncovered from ill-gotten gains and maladministration within the NLC, it was meant for marginalized communities, grannies, sick people, yet people saw it fit to take that money and benefit from it themselves. Despite us having warned the African National Congress, as well as Minister Patel on several occasions, that this particular gentleman was as crooked as they come, and he was being aided and abetted by certain staff at the National Lotteries Commission, this all fell on deaf ears.
Mathew, how does this happen? Because one would assume that there are checks and balances in as far as this amount of money is concerned. It was 100 million rand that the National Lotteries Commission used to enter into contracts with 5 NPOs, right? So given the extent of the money, surely we should know where every rand goes.
Most certainly. There's unfortunately just one oversight, is once the distributing agent in combination with the lottery has given the money to the NPO, it is then considered to have been a complete transaction. So what happens with that money afterwards is kind of left up to the devices of individual investigators, investigative journalists to find out. Because for many years they received clean audits from the Auditor General because it was considered a clean transaction by virtue of them having been able to provide the necessary documentation. It's only up until this recent year where the Auditor General gave them a qualified audit opinion because they went digging further and made sure that they were able to trace the flow of the money. And that's why we sit in the situation that we do.
So what are you saying? The checks and balances are not working? They're there, but the people who are meant to provide oversight are not doing that?
Most certainly. And I think what comes in most definitely is the fact that there is proactive funding, which is given on the discretion of the board or the minister, and all the proper processes that need to be followed are not followed in the same way as an ordinary application. And there's going to be a definite need for a conversation as to how we amend that particular regulation, because I think that it's allowed for the industrial scale looting of the lottery and its funds, and we need to bring this to an end. I think the SIU has done excellent work thus far, but this is only preserving the assets and seizing the assets. We need to make sure that these people are put behind bars and that they spend an extremely long time in jail. It's unacceptable that they've been able to steal the money of marginalized communities in the way that they have, and they have not been held accountable as of yet.
Mathew, the other thing that's coming out just from the coverage around the story is that when these kinds of contracts are entered into with NPOs, so let's say there are 5 NPOs, 100 million rand, and each of those NPOs gets 20 million rand. There's very little in terms of follow-up from the National Lotteries Commission itself in how that money was spent. So if I'm an NPO and I say I need a particular amount of money to build, for example, a rehabilitation center, I get that money, but where's the follow-up?
Most certainly. You'll see with a number of these projects, particularly with the hijacked NGOs and particularly with old age homes, there's a number of old age homes that are purported to have been built, but if you go there, there are open sites. There's pretty much nothing that's gone on. And for all of the hijacked projects, there seems to be the same modus operandi that's followed. And the NLC have done nothing to clamp down on that, nothing to report this to the relevant law enforcement authorities. And as far as they are concerned, all is well and all is fine, and they are doing their job as prescribed by the legislation. And sadly, that's not the reality, because people are hear that this money has been allocated to their community. They expect that a project's going to be built. They arrive in their community and they see that there's no project that's been built. So it's a crying shame.
Is it a case of the NPOs working in cahoots with officials from the National Lotteries Commission?
Most certainly, in many, many cases. And there are predetermined NGOs for hijacking that may have been dormant for a period of time. They are used as conduits and washing machines to try and get that money out. You would have seen in the ground-up story yesterday related to this particular matter that what happened was as soon as the 100 million rand was transferred to those 5 NPOs, it was immediately paid over to a transferring attorney who then went and purchased the house for 27 million rand.
So insofar as the SIU's investigation is concerned, it's obtained preservation orders for that property that was bought for 27 million rand, the property that was bought under the guise of Nevhutanda Investments. Of course, that company, the sole director, is the former chairperson of the National Lotteries Board, the National Lotteries Commission, pardon me. Insofar as the SIU's investigation is concerned, Mathew, does it extend to the NPOs as well, and not just how the NLC spends this money?
Yes, it does extend to the NPOs, and you would also see in the preservation order that the organizations involved also have their assets attached. It's happened in the previous instances, the second time that the SIU have gone to the special tribunal. And ideally, these people, in combination with the former leadership of the NLC, need to be held accountable in a court of law and criminally charged by the relevant people.
Just looking at some of the coverage in the morning papers around the story, investigations by journalists showing that supposed rehabilitation center that would have cost 31 million rand, it's not in operation. In fact, it's a dilapidated site. People who were given money to do athletics tracks in the northwest didn't do any work, and yet they were given more money. That's according to Kaiser Khanyako, the SIU spokesperson.
Yes, most certainly. So you'll see a number of companies in this particular preservation order, as well as the one that was granted earlier this year, have received money in the 2020-2021 financial year. We only managed to get a hold of the annual report last year, and you'll see that all of the same criminals have received money once again, despite at the time these issues having been raised with them and us calling on them alongside other stakeholders for them to not give these individuals money. They still went ahead and gave these individuals as well as these organizations money.
Yeah.
Which just shows you how blatant they are and how brazen they are in their corrupt acts.
Perhaps because there isn't a real fear that there'll be real consequences.
Well, I think there was that feeling until the SIU came along. So, as per the briefing that we received from the SIU earlier this year, they've only investigated 12 out of the 50 cases thus far, and they've already established about 300 million rand that was stolen. So one can just imagine once they've completed all 50 investigations and once they've been able to complete their work. Now, I mean, there's so many instances of corruption, it's going to be impossible for them to find each and every project and each and every individual. But I think if they are able to recoup a majority of the funds and working in combination with the NPA, they are able to make sure that these individuals are prosecuted, then I think justice would have been served. Absolutely.
Mathew Cuthbert, let me thank you for your time this morning on the AM report. He's with the DA's Shadow Ministry of Trade and Industry as we continue to track really this shocking story of money meant for community upliftment going for the allegedly personal enrichment of the former chair of the National Lotteries Commission. A story we've got our eyes on for you this morning.